Hi, GERO 200. Here we are again. Today's Sunday, November 9th, and we're going to cover Module 12, talking about advanced directives, durable power of attorney for healthcare today.
You guys can become attorneys just like Kim Kardashian.
Kind of. Um, but anyway, this is a really important topic. The good news about this is you do not need an attorney to have an advanced directive or a durable power of attorney for healthcare. You can get a good one online. You can get one probably from your doctor or your healthcare plan. The one I use is a Kaiser Permanente form.
So we're going to do to 12 or 11. Why it's
We're doing 12.
okay.
Yeah. So, and before I get too excited about this topic, because I'm very excited about this topic in general, just a reminder, your CT2 is due tomorrow, which is Monday, November 10th.
Here.
We have coming up the last 2 weeks of the semester, we have our midterm open, our second midterm exam open for 2 weeks. Sometimes people have a lot going on the last week of the semester and they want to take it early. Obviously, not that many people are ready, but if you are, and it would help you to take the exam the week before the last week of classes, then that's okay. And then we have our final interview paper that's due the first Wednesday of the final exam period. And we have our dog.
Lucy, she's very needy this time of day.
It's almost dinner time.
She's also she's just weirded out by us not giving her all of our attention.
So I don't want you to get overly intimidated by the final interview paper. Half of the paper is going to be your interview, where you ask questions and you write down the answers or summarize the answers. And then the other half of the interview the paper is going to be you talking about the answers. So if you interview someone who has high blood pressure or diabetes or dementia or stroke, you go onto the internet and you find a reliable website or an article. It can be an article from a newspaper. It can be a website like WebMD, and you talk about that condition. And so if you have any questions, reach out to me. I will be sending out tips about the final interview paper. I'll send out a review for the second midterm.
And the best thing you can do, like some people might wait till the holidays, Thanksgiving, okay? And what I always suggest you do is you take out your phone and you do a video. Come on, Lucy, stop. And record it, and it's for posterity. It's
just for your own purposes.
It's amazing.
We're not asking you to turn in videos.
No.
It was something I did with my dad before he passed away.
And I did with my mom, and it's super cool, man.
And I really wish I'd done it with my mom before she passed away. It's nice in the future, to sit down with someone and ask them questions. And I remember my dad just lighting up at a time in his life when it was kind of hard for him to have long conversations, but I was asking him questions about, where were you born and where did you grow up and where did you go to school? And we talked for hours, and I'll treasure that video.
And you get to have a conversation with your grandparents if you're lucky enough to use your grandparents, even your parents, where it's actually they open up to you because you're talking about topics that you've never talked about before. It's really cool.
Hopefully it's one of my favorite assignments out of all of my classes.
Yeah.
I really enjoy reading about people's stories and their families and learning about.
So our discussion is a little bit about diversity in terms of your future and let's say you run an assisted living facility and caregiving, things like that. That's what that's all about, and we're going to get into the actual assignment.
Our reading assignment. So we have a pretty simple document that's from the NIA, the federal government, National Institute of Aging, talking about advanced care planning and advanced directives. So when do you need an advanced directive? If you're 18 or older, I strongly encourage you to have an advanced directive that sets out, either in the form of a living will or a durable power of attorney for healthcare, or kind of a combination of both, which many of the documents are. It sets out what you want to have happen if you're not able to make your own healthcare decisions. So you're going to appoint an agent, just like you hire a real estate agent if you want to buy a home. You will appoint an agent in a durable power of attorney for healthcare who will make decisions for you if you need to. In a living will, that's a document that has instructions to your doctor that says, hey, if I'm, brain dead, this is what I want to have happen. If I'm unable to make my own decisions at the end of life, this is what I want to have happen. Like I said, most of the time the documents can have a little mixture of both. And the things that you want to think about, whether it's you or your mom, your dad, your aunties, your uncles, you want to think about and talk to them about what do they want? What's important to them? So, do they want CPR? And I always say this when I'm teaching my class in person about this. If one of my students falls out of his chair and lands on the floor and stops breathing, I'm going to do CPR. That's a young, healthy person who has a really good chance of survival. And we've certainly had cases recently at USC where athletes in practice needed to have their heart started with a defibrillator, and they went on to be, healthy, happy, successful, people. So, but if I'm 80 years old and I have a terminal illness, CPR is probably not going to do much for me. I might have less than a 1% chance of being brought back. And certainly towards the end of life, I know when my dad was suffering from a lot of chronic conditions like lung cancer and COPD, and he was just, towards the end of his life, struggling a little bit. Whenever he would be admitted to the hospital, they would say, okay, do you want us to resuscitate you, or do you want to do not resuscitate order? And he would say, no, I want to do not resuscitate order.
So in terms of your legal document, you keep revisiting this as you get older.
Yeah,
as
and
life
as your health
changes,
situation changes,
then you update it, so
absolutely.
so that way you don't put the huge burden on a family member in case you go unconscious and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what they want,
Yeah.
So
Ventilator use is something that I think attitudes have changed about in the last few years since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, a lot of people would say, I don't want a machine keeping me alive. Post-pandemic, we realized sometimes people can become very sick, as they did when COVID was first happening, and they might be admitted to the hospital. They might be admitted to the intensive care unit. They might be placed on a ventilator for a week or 2 weeks or longer. And then they get better with treatment. They can be withdrawn from the ventilator. They're breathing on their own now, and they get discharged from the hospital, and they go on to live a great life. We have a good friend who was just was riding his bike in San Diego. He got hit by a trash truck, almost crushed, so many injuries, so many surgeries. And so he was heavily sedated, kind of kept in a medical coma and on a ventilator for about 2 weeks. But now he's talking, walking with the help of a walker, and he'll be discharged from the hospital soon. So I think one choice you can make with your advanced directive is, hey, do a trial period of a ventilator, see how things go, and then after a week or two, decide if you want to avoid, say, being on a ventilator for 5 years. People don't usually want that. The other thing that is a kind of an emotional topic is artificial nutrition and hydration. So we all, most of us like our food and water, and we don't want to think about withholding artificial nutrition and hydration from a loved one when they're seriously ill or at the end of life. But what we've learned through having relatives in hospice care is hospice will often instruct the families, hey, don't try to feed your mom. Don't try to put liquid in her mouth, because that liquid's just going to settle in her lungs and make it harder for her to breathe, make her more uncomfortable and prolong her suffering. And so those are conversations that are really good to have with a doctor about, is artificial nutrition and hydration a good thing or a bad thing? Do you recommend it? Do you not? And then the last thing is comfort care. And that's a really individual decision. I want to be comfortable. If I'm seriously ill or at the end of my life, I'm all about give me anti-anxiety meds, which hospice will usually prescribe, pain medications and anti-anxiety medications to help with agitation. I'm all about
opioids.
But I do have a nephew, my niece's husband, who is sober. And for him, his choice would be, I'm sober, and this is hard fought that I got to this place. So for him, he said before that he didn't want to have opioids prescribed to him. Now that decision might change. He's 60 now, but that decision might change when he's 70 or 80 and it's getting a little closer.
And
And there's no right or wrong answer. It's really about individual
depends on your
choice
level of
and
pain,
what feels right to you.
all that kind of stuff. So
The other thing I want people to understand is the difference between hospice and palliative care. So as a cancer patient, I think about hospice care if I get to that point. My condition tends not to be a condition where you would need hospice care. But for a lot of people, typically people who have dementia or people who have cancer or people who have, serious lung disease like my dad did, a lot of those people think ahead and think, hey, towards the end of my life, I'd like to have access to hospice care, which provides you with care that helps make the process of dying easier. So you're only eligible for hospice care if a doctor says that you're going to be terminal within 6 months. So you have to have a terminal illness, and then you sign up typically through your insurance or through Medicare to get this treatment to help you feel better. So once you sign up for hospice care, they will no longer treat your underlying condition. So they're not going to continue to give you chemotherapy if you have cancer. But they will treat you if you get pneumonia and you wanted to have antibiotics, you could have antibiotics. But so it's really designed for the end of life. Research has shown that people who sign up for hospice care live longer and have a better quality of life than people who do not. However, the reality is that the average amount of time that people spend in hospice care is about 2 weeks. So I think we probably could do a better job in the US of educating people about this as a possibility and educating people about the advantages of hospice care so that more people have an easier time of handling the process of dying. Now, palliative care is similar to hospice care in the sense that they're helping you feel more comfortable, that you could have palliative care when you're 10 years old and have it for the rest of your life. If you have a chronic condition, you could have palliative care when you're 50. My aunt has metastatic breast cancer. She's had metastatic breast cancer for probably 10 years. She's received palliative care to help her with symptoms that make her uncomfortable, like bone pain or lung issues or things like that. So that's a long-term treatment just designed to help you live the best quality of life possible. You're still getting treated for your underlying condition. And you have a team of maybe experts that help with your breathing and help with your pain. And so it's a little less organized than hospice care. But it is something that if you're ever offered palliative care or a family member is offered palliative care, don't panic. In the US, palliative care is something where you could have a 50-year life expectancy and still get this support and treatment to help with your symptoms. Okay. So the most important thing about advanced directives is think about what you want. Do I want CPR? Do I want nutrition and hydration? Do I want to be on a ventilator? Or do I want a trial period of all of these things? Communicate with the people that are going to be making decisions for you. So John and I have had 1,000 conversations about end of life issues and what we want. And during the pandemic, I got a little nervous, and I needed to update our durable power of attorney for healthcare documents. So I went ahead and I downloaded the Kaiser Permanente form because I really liked it. It had everything I wanted in a form, and it was free, and it's on the internet, and it was for California. So I knew it was going to be legal in California. So John and I filled out the forms, and both of my sons were over 18. So I said, hey, you know what? Good time for you guys to get an advance directive in place as well. So they filled out the forms. And typically, when you fill out these forms, you're either going to get it notarized by a public notary that certifies, hey, you are who you say you are, and a stranger didn't fill out the form for you. Or in our case, we just used 2 neighbors on our street that we've known for a long time. So they're vouching that we are who we say we are, that they saw us sign the forms, that, we didn't seem to be under any duress or any stress or anything like that. And so, like I said, it's free. You can get a form off the internet. It's pretty easy. You don't need to go to a notary public. You can if that's your choice. And in California, there's a law that says, I think notary publics can only charge $10 per signature. So it's not super expensive. Once you have that document in place, You're going to want to give it to the person who you've appointed to be your healthcare agent. So I have a Google Drive folder that I've shared with everyone in the family, so everyone has a copy. And then in our world today of electronic healthcare records, I've gone onto my patient portal, and I've gone onto John's patient portal, and I think for my son's too, and I've uploaded the documents so that my doctors have copies of the documents. So there's typically a place, if you use my chart, you can scroll down and there's this thing called advanced directives or additional documents. It might be called something different depending on your providers. And you upload that document, they'll check it to make sure that it looks okay. Then they'll say, okay, we've approved it. And then you might have a second option where you can specify who on your patient portal, on your electronic patient portal, where you can specify who your primary decision maker is, who your secondary decision maker is. And as a lawyer, what I always tell people is don't just appoint one person. You need to have layers of protection. So you're going to have a primary decision maker. I have a secondary decision maker. I have a third one. And that's because, what if John and I get into a car accident and neither one of us is able to make decisions for the other one? Then my oldest son is next. My youngest son is third. And periodically, every 5 years or so, or if you get married, divorced, move states, whatever, you're going to go back and update this document because it used to be my mom was the secondary decision maker, but she passed away. And then John's brother, who's now almost 80, was our third decision maker. And we decided that was too much of a burden for him, even though, we trust him and he would definitely be the guy that would be helping out if we were sick.
Our kids became adults, and
Yes.
it's time for them to do their thing.
And I asked them, are you comfortable playing this role for us? And they said, okay, And so definitely, once you've got the document in place, you want to give it to your agent, who's going to make your decisions. Give it to your doctor. Don't just put it in a drawer, because if it's just sitting in a drawer and no one can find it when you're sick, it's not very helpful. So there have been times, because we do a lot of caregiving for our relatives, where I've said, okay, let's copy the advanced directive for your mom and keep it in the car so that we have it in case we're at work and get a call and need to go to the hospital for her. So you want to make sure that you have easy access to it. Make sure you've distributed that document and not just put it into a file drawer.
What's the difference between a living will and a power of attorney?
Living will is end of life issues. So a living will is a document that instructs your doctor that says, I do not want CPR, or I do want CPR. I don't want artificial nutrition hydration. I do want artificial nutrition hydration. I don't want to be on a ventilator. I do want to be on a ventilator. And, I want comfort care, or I don't want comfort care.
So this is you making the decision, and then the doctors have it, and that agent, they're not involved.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really end of life.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you have the option on the living will form to say, yes, I want this. No, I don't want it. Or I want it for a trial period. Right. And so I think that's kind of nice.
So some people don't want to put that burden on somebody to make that decision. So you can just do a living will then. But if you want to have somebody calling the shots for you, then you do this second thing right here.
Yeah. Then the other thing I talked about was when my dad would be admitted to the hospital, they would ask him, do you want a do not resuscitate order on your chart? So that's helpful to have. When John's dad was towards the end of his life, he had COPD and he had kidney issues and just a lot of things going on. And he would end up being taken to the hospital, once a year or twice a year, something like that. He had a do not resuscitate order. So on the day that he was admitted to the hospital the last time, I think he lost consciousness and probably stopped breathing. And his mom called 911 and they came. And I think that his DNR was on the refrigerator, or it was in a drawer. And so when the emergency response people come, they're going to resuscitate you unless they have a clear indication that you do not want to be resuscitated. They don't want to make that mistake in the wrong direction. So they did resuscitate him. He did go to the hospital. He was in a coma on life support for about a week or two. And the doctor said, hey, he's 85. He's not going to get better. We tried weaning him off the ventilator. We recommend that you withhold nutrition hydration and that you take them off the ventilator and see what happens. And then usually at that point,
He died in a couple of days.
it can be
Yeah.
anywhere from minutes to a few days. And that's what happened. It took him a few days. But anyway, so that's something that as people get older or have chronic or terminal illnesses, having a do not resuscitate order is helpful. We also have something called a POLST, a physician order for life-sustaining treatment. It's like a DNR, but it's more complicated. It allows you to make more decisions about what you want. A DNR just says, I don't want CPR. Don't restart my heart. A pulse goes into more detail, kind of like a living will, where it says, yeah, I do want CPR, or I don't want CPR, but I do want comfort care. So you've got a couple different options on a pulse form, and that's a relatively new development, but I think is available now in every state at some level of that.
That's more common now with the lack of trust in healthcare that has kind of emerged in our country recently.
I don't know.
Good
question.
Yeah.
So we have some resources at the bottom of this form. Okay. So I like Caring Connections. That's a really good resource. I like the American Bar Association. We have in almost every state, there is a form that's literally embedded in the probate code that is the advanced directive form. So you just want to make sure that you're using a form that's legal and enforceable in your state, because we have a handful of states that require an additional notification, kind of a little additional language. So you want to make sure that, if you're living in California, you have a California form. If you split time between two states, you might need to have a global form that's valid in both states, or if you're in one of those states that requires additional language, you might need to have multiple forms.
And there have been cases where people have been brain dead, and didn't have the orders set into motion, and there were arguments, had to go to the courts, right? And in the meantime, especially with our wavering coverage with healthcare, this costs, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep people alive. And the medical professionals will evaluate and say there's nothing left but the brain, but we can keep everything else going artificially. So do you want that to happen?
Yeah. So what do you want to do if you want to change your form? So let's say you've graduated from USC and 5 years from now, you have a new life partner and you want that person to make decisions for you, or maybe you've broken up with your life partner and you don't, you're like, oh, please, no, I don't want that person to make decisions for me. You want to revisit your form. If you sign a new form, then the most recent form will be the one that will be effective. You can tear up the old form. You can, tell the person that you appointed to be your agent, hey, you're not my agent anymore. I changed my mind. No hard feelings. And if you uploaded it to any of your patient charts, you're going to want to upload the new one or delete the old one and then upload the new one to make sure that everybody has the most recent form. So, okay. So the other thing that I've included in this module is America, the US is a little different than a lot of other countries in the sense that we have this tremendous emphasis on individual freedom and liberty and autonomy and respecting the individual right to choose. So our whole healthcare system is kind of built around, we're going to let the person, whether it's an older adult or anyone else who's over 18, make their own healthcare decisions as long as they are capable of doing so.
And that's a big capacity.
Yes. So a doctor, sometimes if you go with your grandparent to the doctor will ask them these kind of casual conversational questions, and you don't want to answer for them. Let them answer the questions, because the doctor's judging their capacity. Oh, hey, what'd you have for dinner last night? What are you doing for fun right now? How about those Chicago Bears?
Yeah.
Yay.
What year is it? What day is it?
So anyway, so we do in the US have a preference that the individual makes their own healthcare decisions as long as they are capable of doing so. And then When they are no longer capable, then we look to the advanced directive to get guidance about who's going to be what we call a substituted decision maker. And that's different than a lot of other countries where the doctor might talk to the family about treatment or about diagnosis or prognosis. But in an effort to protect the older adult, they don't talk to them about what their prognosis is or what the treatment options are. So, okay.
And
So now,
a whole different layer that we don't get into is, I guess, conservatorships. That would that come into
well,
play?
in a
So
perfect world, you would not need a conservatorship most
that's
of the time if you have a power of attorney for healthcare decisions and a power of attorney for financial decisions. So you don't want to be in a situation where you have an older relative or an older friend or a younger friend who ends up having serious health issues and they can't make their own decisions. And now you have to go to court. And now you have to hire a doctor and pay money. And it's going to cost $5,000 or $10,000 unless you get some good free legal help to go to court and get a conservatorship over the person or get a conservatorship over their finances. So I like having these documents dealt with up front, and it solves a lot of problems and avoids a lot of hassle. Okay, so let's talk multicultural aging. So our prompt is, what would you or your family members want if they were living in a skilled nursing facility or living in an assisted living facility? What are the things that are important to them, that are important to your background, your beliefs, your culture, your ethnicity? Is it food? Is it music? Is it having people speak your language? Is it, are there activities that you like? What would be important to make your loved one feel respected and valued and well taken care of in that facility? And I think it's really important when we talk about aging to appreciate the fact that we have groups who are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to maybe not getting the best care. They're vulnerable to just not having access to care. So people that live in rural areas may have to drive 2 hours to get to a hospital. I mean, things are going to be a lot more difficult for them. They may not have visitors because the weather's bad or their families live far away. We talk a lot about our LGBTQ plus community. So, people that are our age, John and I are both in our 60s. When we grew up and when we were in college, you couldn't marry your partner if you were LGBTQ plus. So people our age are less likely to have gotten married. They're less likely to have had kids. They may be estranged from their families, so they may have to rely on neighbors and friends for support as they get older and have some of the challenges that come with aging. So I think it's really important to recognize if you have a vulnerable population like LGBTQ plus adults, to treat them as individuals and respect kind of the struggles that they've had and make sure that your staff and your facility are respectful as well. We should be thinking about our Black Americans as they age and what do they need from a facility. And if you are a group of people that's experienced, a lot of racism in your life, and we've had some really unfortunate things happen. Unfortunate is not really the right word. Really tragic and terrible things that have happened in the U.S., like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, where that has left kind of a taste where people our age that are old enough to remember this stuff maybe don't trust the medical establishment. So you're going to have to build trust and respect with people and appreciate where they're coming from and what their prior experiences have been so that they can feel comfortable when they're in care.
look at this as a job opportunity. So, you can work in a hospital setting. You can work in assisted living, nursing home, and then you'll be prepared for all the different types of cultures that may be tapping into your expertise, your clients. If you're not prepared, it's a competitive world out there, competitive business world out there. You may not make it, so
Yeah.
so it's good to think about these things. I think this website is
So you can
This
go
is
into
our,
this website. If you scroll down and expand, they have resources talking about different vulnerable groups. And one of the things they say on this website is that our biggest group that's growing fastest of older adults in the US is our Hispanic older adults. So if I'm thinking about going into business in long-term care, then I'm thinking, I want to be able to serve this population, this population, this population, and this population, and learn everything I can so that I can serve Hispanic adults, LGBTQ plus adults, Black adults. Don't forget about our Asian community, which is growing in the U.S. and has I think since COVID, there's been more anti-Asian bias and anti-Asian hate crimes. And so when people are coming into your facility, you gotta appreciate their experiences that they've had and be able to build trust and have good communication and have really good training for your staff so that your staff can communicate and create a sense of caring for all of your residents and
so
patients.
just go through this, navigate it. You'll see there's great resources for you to check out. You can go up here and you go up here and check out all the different resources that are out there. Okay, guys.
And last but not least,
All right, let's go back.
no, I'm done with that.
Sorry.
I forgot to mention that we do have extra credit. I'd like for it to be turned in by the last day of classes, which is December 5th. A lot of people record a video, which I think is cool because I get to see our students. I grade it myself, or John can help grade. So if you want to include personal information, no one's going to see it except for us, and we promise to keep it confidential.
There it is. So
yes.
that's where you would upload it right there. And
Yes.
this gives you the
And you
prompt.
can be creative. Some people write poetry. I've had people record a song. I've had people, a lot of people do videos and send me the link. I've had people do photo collages, which is really fun to kind of see what your journey through USC has been like. But it's an assignment that's probably more for my benefit than it is for yours, because it helps me really understand our students and what they're experiencing and living through and what's important to them. So I think it's
And this gives you an idea of the prompt, what
and
you,
it adds
what you can dwell into.
it adds 3 points to your final grade. So if you
3
had
percentage points out of 100. So
if you had an 87, it would take you to a 90.
it's very cool.
So let us know if you have any questions.
Awesome. If you have any legal questions, she's an attorney, so she can't practice law for you.
Yeah,
But
I'm not going to give you legal
No.
advice, but I can steer you in the right
yeah,
direction.
what it was like to go to law school and and the career and all that kind of stuff.
And
Okay?
I'm good at writing letters of recommendation.
There you go.
So is John.
I do okay. All
Okay.
right. All right, guys. Peace.
Alrighty.
I'll
Bye.
see you.